Yeah.
So could you please explain how people were using and understanding tempi back in Baroque era?
That's a great question. It's a hard question to answer in detail. So let's just go from the surface here, from a bird's angle's perspective. First of all, in the 18th century, as in the 19th century, had a diversity, but there were some general consensus. I think musicians and certainly composers, and there was those who were connected until mid 19th century. That's the reason. Part of the reason why with tempi and performances went wrong in the 19th century, because the composer was disconnected from the musician. But anyways, in the 18th century, I had a certain consensus that composers knew, if I'm going to use this notation, I might be pretty sure, or I might hope, that someone else understands what I'm writing down. And although in the 18th century you had already an additional complexity compared to the 17th century, still you had a certain basis to start from. For instance, if you had common time, 4/4 time signature, and you were using only 16 notes, and the harmonic progression was not too quick, like let's say once every half note, where a kind of harmonic progression. That's a normal tempo ordinario, which would mean that's a tempo around a second. 60 is a tempo you find defined actually time and time again. That's the basic pulse. Quants is a little bit faster, but then we are going into too much detail perhaps. So, and then you basically have a general rule. When you are using less and less fast note values, your tempo goes up until you come at a certain time signature or a certain notation, what we call today still alla breve, which is something we with the cut time, you know. That's also coming forth from the mensual time. So alla breve is a time signature in which you're not using 16th notes, where your harmonic progression is only one time a bar, I mean generally speaking, and your tempo is double that of the common time. But you're not using 16th notes, so basically the absolute time is the same. The only reason why you would use common time, but then we are going in detail, is to have a more detailed articulation. And to the bottom, the same thing. If you see a lot of 30-second notes added in a structural way, which means you want to give to each note a certain individual quality, then your tempo will be slower. How much slower? That's of course the reason why the metronome was invented, when this system was even more complex in the 19th century. So you basically had a very simple system that allowed you to just in one glance see, okay, am I dealing with a normal notation, slow notation, or fast notation? And that once you see that, it's not so hard to come up with the right tempo. And then last thing, just the allegro, Italian tempo words, they came in the 18th century, of course, more and more. But for Bach, for instance, when the character is lively and he does not indicate allegro, you go from 60 to 76 or to 80 or to 84, whatever your taste is telling you. You're not going to 120, but you just add a little bit on top of that because you have an allegro character. So that's in a nutshell how this notation system worked.